Ron.
Yeah.
Why didn't you say it the first time I said Ron?
Because it's pronounced Aaron.
You done messed up, Ron.
Hello, everyone. Ron is here. Welcome back for more SPTV, where every day is a great day. Not to be in a cult. Today's video is a little bit of a complicated one. I'm going to do my best to keep it as calm and rational as possible. None of this is intended in any way, shape, or form to be any sort of an attack on Mike Rinder. Many people have asked me why I have not commented or done any videos on Mike Rinder passing. And that's because I feel that to do so would be to inappropriately make it about me, and I was not going to do that. And I'm not going to do that, and that's not what today's video is about. It is no surprise to anyone who's been watching my channel over the last year that by the time of Mike's passing, he and I were no fans of each other, and I'm not interested in making money doing a video on him passing. Now, someone could say, well, you could just demonetize the video. There's no reason to make Mike's passing about me by doing a video about it on my channel, which is why I have not done so. What I did do was put up a community post that simply said, RIP Mike Rinder, please donate to his son's college fund if you can. Seemed fair and respectful and appropriate, which is why in the link of the live chat and in the comments below, I'll put a link to Mike's son's college fund. There's in Mike's own blog, he put up a final post directing his viewers to a link to a particular Florida prepaid college savings plan. Here's what it looks like. And the link to it, like I said, is in the live chat, and I'll put it in the comments. This video is specifically my response to a Substack article that Leah Remini wrote last night, partially eulogizing her good friend Mike Rinder, but also taking the opportunity to tell all of the ex-Scientologists who have had very uncomfortable questions or unflattering opinions about Mike Rinder over the last year of his life, that they can all go F themselves, and that they are dead to her, and they are beneath her, and that she will never utter their names because they don't deserve it. But there's nothing they could ever do to ever be right with her. And this video, we're going to go over part of her blog post. Yeah, that's what this is about. Let's see here. For those of you who didn't know that Leah Remini had a Substack, this is what it looks like. My brother, Mike Rinder. Okay. We are going to tackle about 9 of the paragraphs in here. Okay, Leah says, there has been no one who suffered more than Mike Rinder, both in and out of Scientology. And yet Mike continued to do the work despite it all. He continued to help those who left Scientology, even those who stabbed him in the back. Okay. I want to be the first to say, I consider Mike Rinder to be someone who's done a lot of excellent and valuable work since leaving Scientology. I am not someone who sees Mike Rinder as a bad guy. I am not someone who, as others have said, thinks Mike Rinder's been part of some long con operation, secretly working with David Miscavige to suppress the revelation of true crimes and blah, 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 blah. I'm also not someone who actually ever holds it against anyone what they did in Scientology, short of abusing children in very specific ways that you guys can guess. I do not think Mike Rinder is a bad guy. And even though we had a lot of disagreements, to put it very, very mildly, and even though, as Leah would say, well, I mean, let's take a look at this exact language here. Leah is saying that there are ex-Scientologists who stabbed Mike Rinder in the back. Leah, first of all, I have to say how distasteful it is, in my opinion, that you've taken a eulogy of Mike Rinder and used it to basically say F you to like half of the former Scientologist community. And you know, the community that you're talking to is a community that is, for the most part, just as dedicated to exposing Scientology fraud and abuse of children, abuse of the elderly, and destruction of families as Mike Rinder was. The only difference is they have inconvenient questions and feelings about Mike Rinder. And in your eyes, that makes them lesser than. Where I'm going with all this is, it is one thing to be a part of a movement of former members of any cult community and be working hard to expose the fraud and the abuse and the lies and the destruction and telling the truth. It's one thing to be a part of that community. It's another thing to become somewhat of a de facto leader of that community. And it's another thing when the person who becomes sort of the de facto leader of that community used to be one of the people in charge of destroying people's lives in Scientology. It is not Mike's fault that he rose to that he came to have that role in Scientology. It's not Mike's fault that he ended up being the head of the Office of Special Affairs. It's not Mike's fault that he ended up being the watchdog committee member for the Office of Special Affairs. It's not Mike's fault that his role in Scientology was to utterly destroy people who dared speak out against Scientology. It's not Mike's fault, but it is still a fact. And I feel that it is not wrong for members of the former community who used to be members of the cult of which Mike Rinder was responsible for destroying people's lives in that cult. It's not wrong for people in the community to have tough, pointed, difficult, uncomfortable, and inconvenient questions for and about Mike Rinder. It doesn't make those people bad. It doesn't make those people dishonest, and it doesn't make those people backstabbers. And without having walked in his shoes, I can't say what dictated his decisions. But for example, I assume one of the people you're talking about stabbing Mike Rinder in the back is Miriam Francis. And Miriam obviously had a lot of tough questions for Mike Rinder that he obviously didn't like, and they were insulting and they were potentially damning. I don't know why Mike Rinder chose not to sort of put himself up there in front of the firing squad, even if it was a firing squad of one, and take the really, really tough questions and just give the best answers that he could, so that everyone watching could just make up their own minds. I don't even mean to imply that if I were in Mike Rinder's shoes, I would have been big enough to do that. But I am saying that that is what it would have taken to put people's mind at ease. That what had been going on for the last 17 years was not in some way, shape, or form some big, massive, partial cover-up. To put people's mind at ease that what had been going on for the last 17 years was some sort of exposing the stuff that was comfortable, but continuing to hide the stuff that was uncomfortable. I don't mind telling the world that many of the things Miriam is convinced Mike is, complicit for are things I don't actually think she's right about. But I don't know for sure. And it's not my place to tell someone what questions they can and cannot ask or what they can and cannot believe. And the only person who had the power to do that was Mike Rinder. And not only did he choose not to do that, but he chose to attack and denigrate the person who was asking the uncomfortable questions. And that allowed things to snowball and to spiral. And then unfortunately, you, Leah Remini, sort of elected yourself as Mike Rinder's human shield against any and all criticism from people in the former Scientology world. And that has destroyed your credibility. It's destroyed your lawsuits, and it's probably destroyed your career. It is simply not your job, Leah Remini, as a celebrity former Scientologist, to tell members of this former community what questions they're allowed to ask of Mike Rinder, what things they're allowed to believe of Mike Rinder, and to basically tell everyone, I say everyone, you've said it in private, anyone who's got a problem with Mike Rinder has a problem with me. That's kind of a problem, Leah, because people have a right to have a problem with Mike Rinder. And I would think that you would understand that, since you yourself had a lot of problems with Mike Rinder. You just didn't want to make them public. And the thing is, you were attacking people who even only privately had problems with Mike Rinder, that it wasn't okay and it wasn't okay. So dare I say that your attempt to suppress honest questions and concerns about Mike in this community contributed to the spiral effect that occurred. And it wasn't purely organic. Part of it was manufactured. The truth is, I know it, you know it, everyone on the Aftermath Foundation and the SPTV Foundation boards know it. We've had someone in our community who has made it their mission in life to try to distract everyone in this community off of attacking Scientology and on to attacking Mike Rinder. And that's Jamie Mustard. You know it, I know it, everyone knows it. So that certainly didn't help. You know, but let's go back to this paragraph. There's been no one who suffered more than Mike Rinder, both in and out of Scientology. And yet Mike continued to do the work despite it all. He continued to help those who left Scientology and even those who stabbed him in the back. Leah, I think you and I both know that Mike did not continue to help people who he felt stabbed him in the back. Even people who are currently engaged in litigation against Scientology. Even people who, you know, could have benefited from depositions from the former head of Office of Special Affairs International about certain things. And when you say that no one suffered more than Mike Rinder out of Scientology, the problem here, Leah, is that you're setting it up as the Victim Olympics. Who gets to win the Victim Olympics? And whoever wins the gold medal in the Victim Olympics can never be questioned, can never be criticized. And the problem is, you cannot say that the man whose job in Scientology was to destroy people's lives was also the one who, outside of Scientology, suffered the most. You can't even say he's the one who suffered the most inside. I'm sorry, getting beat up by David Miscavige a bunch of times is not the worst thing that happened to people in Scientology. Lives have been destroyed. Lives have been taken. Lives have been ended. Children have been abused in the most horrific ways. The Office of Special Affairs has blamed and shamed these children for their abuse. The Office of Special Affairs has facilitated getting the abusers out of jurisdictions, hiding them from the authorities, not reporting them to the authorities, keeping the predators within the ranks, keeping them on staff, keeping them in the Sea Org, in some cases, transferring them to areas where there's even more children. Leah, you're making the mistake again of nominating yourself Mike Rinder's human shield. You did it while he was alive, and now you're doing it after he passed. It will always be acceptable to ask real, honest, tough questions of the high-level former Scientology executives who are most complicit in these destructive acts, and to question why things went down the way that they went down after these people left Scientology. I can't help but comment on the hypocrisy of you wholly condemning ex-Scientologists for having a problem, those who have a problem with Mike Rinder, when you yourself had huge problems with Mike Rinder. And I know because you told me. It makes me scratch my head why you would publicly denigrate and humiliate whole swaths of this community when there's a lot of people in this community who know more of the truth. You were absolutely livid with Mike when you found out that he had never told you about the files, the thousands of files that he had in his possession and took with him when he left Scientology. I know this because you told me. It's why you didn't visit Mike even once during his whole period with cancer until he was finally in hospice. Because you couldn't bring yourself to be in the same space as him without going off on him for never having told you about these documents, even when you were making a TV show, even when you could have used these documents and exposed them to the world, even when these documents had evidence of covering up child SA. And you dare denigrate and humiliate people in this community who want to ask those questions publicly. The same questions you had privately, but you don't have the balls to admit publicly the questions you were never, ever even able to get an answer to privately. Not everyone in this community had the relationship with Mike Rinder that you did. Not everyone sees him as my friend, my brother. Some people see him as their former abuser. You don't get to denigrate those people because they don't see your brother, Mike Rinder, the same way that you do. Okay, let's look at the next paragraph. To the former Scientologists who hurt Mike, spoke out against him with lies, and launched campaigns against him. He expected that from Scientology and Scientologists, but not from you. The unfortunate thing here, Leah, is that in Mike's death, you're now speaking for him. And it prompts people to respond, but Mike's not the one doing the talking. You are. And for anyone Mike felt had attacked him or launched campaigns against him, there are others who would have felt the same way. Except in this community, Mike Rinder has power. Mike Rinder has altitude. Not the least of which is because of his affiliation with you. You have nominated yourself and Mike Rinder as the co-leaders of the ex-Scientology movement. That's kind of a problem. Because when you and Mike Rinder go after someone, you're doing it with a lot of altitude. You're doing it with a lot of power. I mean, I can take it. The community was collectively outraged at how you and Mike Rinder treated Miriam Francis, regardless of what she was saying, regardless of how she felt, regardless of how you two felt about what she felt and what she was saying. You and Mike Rinder, I'll talk about you. You made millions of dollars, and it was millions because I know. You made millions of dollars letting other Scientologists tell their stories on your show. When those same Scientologists, on whose backs you earned millions of dollars and multiple Emmy Awards, had very tough questions and feelings, it is you, Leah, who turned on them. It is you who stabbed them in the back. Now, you might think it was a mutual backstabbing, but one of the parties in that mutual backstabbing had a fuck of a lot more power than the other. And for you to drag these people in the same article where you're eulogizing Mike Rinder, You should not have done that. Let's carry on. You broke Mike Rinder's heart. And for you now to feign tears while posting tributes for Mike and his family, I say this: go and fuck yourselves. Now, I got to tell you, I did not take that personally because she's obviously talking about Nora. Oh no, Nora. Nora Ames. Here's where I agree with Leah. Here's where I agree with you, Leah. Nobody in this community has brutally and viciously published the most disgusting and vile and hateful lies about Mike Rinder pretty much every single day for about 8 hours a day for the past year, even while Mike Rinder was dying. For that, I completely condemn Nora. The fact that on Mike's death, Nora then did a live stream just sobbing about the passing of a man she had continued to call evil, an evil liar, criminal. You guys understand? I don't feel this way about Mike Rinder. There's very, very specific issues I have about Mike Rinder. Mike Rinder is not a bad guy. Mike Rinder is not a villain. Mike Rinder has been a huge net positive for the movement of exposing Scientology. That's not what Nora's been saying for the last year. And even though Nora claims she didn't monetize her video, she got lots of super chats. And even though she said she donated to Mike's son's college fund, she never said how much she donated. So when Leah expresses outrage that the people who've been trying to destroy Mike Rinder for the last year would dare post sobbing tributes to Mike Rinder, I agree. That's disgusting. And that's why I haven't said a word. I also have not spent the last year trying to destroy Mike Rinder. I have never tried to destroy Mike Rinder. The fact that Leah's determination for who's doing good work exposing Scientology is whether or not you think Mike Rinder has told all, has covered up this, has covered up that, or whatever, shows that, in my opinion, Leah Remini's priority isn't getting as many people as possible to expose Scientology as possible. It's trying to reward people who think Mike Rinder never did anything bad and penalize people who are like, I got some questions and some problems. For the record, as I sit here right now, the only unresolved question I have at all, that's a big question, and it gives me a lot of pause, is Mike Rinder had said what he is most proud of in his entire life was the work that he did with Child USA, getting certain statute of limitations laws pertaining to Child SA lifted, eased in certain states, and in certain states, getting a look-back window where perpetrators of Child SA could be held accountable civilly without any concerns about statutes of limitations, and that just such a thing happened in California, the state of California, a 2-year look-back window where any victim of Child SA in Scientology, but all encompassing, could file a lawsuit and try to seek justice civilly. A couple weeks before that 2-year look-back window was about to end, I received a phone call from Jane Doe 1 in the Danny Masterson case. And she was pretty alarmed. And she said, I've just found out about this look-back window. It's about to close. I'm, frantically already have representation. I'm getting a lawsuit filed on my own. We need to do something about this. We need to put out the word. We need to sound the alarm. And this is back when me and Mike were still very close. And I admit, and I'm embarrassed to admit it, but I admit, I didn't take what she said seriously. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, if this were real, I'd already know about it because Mike would have told me about it. If this were a thing that required urgent action, I wouldn't be hearing about it for the first time from Jane Doe 1. I was honestly in disbelief. And that prevented me from taking action. I said, I'm thinking to myself, there must be a misunderstanding. You know, laws are complicated. Maybe you're not truly understanding it, because if so, I'd already have heard about it. The window was literally weeks away from closing. Leah Remini got the same phone call. Leah, we got to do something. This is a big deal. We're about to lose the opportunity. Leah said, baby, maybe you should call Mike. Does Mike know? So what's my big unresolved question? If this was indeed the work that Mike Rinder was most proud of in his entire life, which he said in an interview with John Atack about a year ago or so, why is it that no one in the former Scientology community was alerted to the fact of the 2-year look-back window, to the importance of the 2-year look-back window? By the way, this was during a time when my channel had already achieved a certain amount of reach. I mean, this is probably a period where Mike Rinder and I were talking every day. I never received any information about the look-back window. I never received a request to use my channel to, put up the bat signal. No one ever said anything. The 2-year litigation look-back window opened and closed without a single lawsuit being filed against Scientology by a former Scientologist child SA victim. That look-back window was supposed to be the opportunity to really take him down. Not one word was shared in this community about that window, about the importance of it. There was no call to action, not even privately. I had been thinking about doing, but decided it was a bad idea, to do a video about this in the last few months. And the name of the video was going to be Mike Rinder's Legacy. And it was going to be a video showing the clip from his interview where he said it was the most important work and the most thing he was proud of in his entire life. And it was going to be a clip of a video that I had done with Marilyn Honig, where I actually said this. I said, Mike Rinder's legacy, he will have to answer this question before he dies. Answer the question why no one was told about the look-back window. And, it's a conversation I'd already had with Marilyn on her channel. And I mean, there's nothing Mike Rinder was going to do about it now. And it was clear he was rapidly deteriorating. And I was like, doesn't feel like the right time to put up a video basically demanding that Mike Rinder answer this question before he dies, or else it will be his legacy. But for me, it's unavoidable. Obviously, I never asked Mike the question before he died. I spoke to some of the people who were some of the last people to speak with Mike. I'm not aware that anyone ever actually asked Mike this question. So I don't have the answer from Mike's side. All I can tell you guys is I've been in the inner circle of the Mike Rinder, Leah Remini inner circle for many years now. And I can tell you that by the time that look back window closed, I had not heard a word about it from anyone other than Jane Doe 1, who did successfully get that lawsuit filed, and that lawsuit is moving forward successfully at the moment. This was during a period when Mike Rinder was the board member of Child USA, and Leah Remini was the ambassador for Child USA for children and families. So Leah, since you've nominated yourself to be not only Mike Rinder's human shield, but also his spokesperson post-mortem, maybe you would like to do a blog post explaining why neither you nor Mike, I'm guessing you didn't even know about it, but since you're speaking for Mike, you might as well speak for yourself as well. Why did neither you or Mike tell anyone in the former Scientology community about this look back window in California so child sexual assault lawsuits could be filed by the many, 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 many victims who could have filed such lawsuits? That is the only unresolved question I have about Mike Rinder. And by the way, just because I have that question doesn't mean I'm going to do video after video after video after video after video, 6 hours a day, 7 hours a day, 8 hours a day, talking about something that's never going to get resolution. That's Nora's job. You can go to Nora's channel for that. All right, let's keep going. Leah says, I will never forgive you for what you did to Mike and his family. The irony here is so thick, you could slice it. In the last year, Leah Remini has engaged in and endorsed and cheerleaded some of the most vicious fair game attacks against former Scientologists that I could have ever imagined. It includes threatening Danny Masterson's victims. It includes privately cheerleading people, privately in phone conversations, cheerleading people who've just been trying to basically destroy my life for the last year. Leah Remini threatening Danny Masterson's victims is why her lawyers had to step down and why Leah Remini had to find new lawyers. Leah, for you to say that people asking public questions about Mike Rinder destroyed, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You said, I will never forgive you for what you did to Mike and his family. What does Mike Rinder's family have to do with people asking questions about someone who used to be in charge of destroying people's lives in Scientology? And did you give any care or regard for the families, any regard whatsoever, for the families of the people who you've been helping to fair game for the last year? And do you ever reflect on the absurdity of you cheering on fair game attacks against your fellow former Scientologists while you are suing Scientology for fair gaming you? And when you say nobody has suffered more since leaving Scientology than Mike Rinder, then why is it that Mike Rinder refused to join you in suing Scientology? I mean, you're suing Scientology for all the horrible things they've done to you. You just said no one's suffered more than Mike Rinder. Why did Mike Rinder refuse to sign on to your lawsuit with you? Why did he discourage you from suing Scientology? And is that really what's behind this vitriolic, hateful tirade that you're directing at former Scientologists? Because you know the only person who could have helped you move your lawsuit forward not only is not around to do it anymore, but never even did a deposition for you when there was still time to do it. Why did you not get Mike Rinder's deposition when there was still time for him to do a deposition? And how could Mike do a deposition for you when the discovery as an expert witness, when the reason he didn't want to sue Scientology was because he did not want to be subjected to the brutal and lengthy discovery process, the same discovery process that he would have been subjected to as one of your expert witnesses? Is it in fact the case that Mike Rinder passing now makes it impossible for your lawsuit to move forward because you don't have an expert witness and you don't have his testimony? Is that what's really going on here? Because I suspect that is at least a big part of it. Okay, let's take the next paragraph here. To my dying day. No, let's go back. Okay. You broke his heart, and for you now to feign tears while posting tributes for Mike and his family, I say this: go and fuck yourselves. I will never forgive you for what you did to Mike and his family. To my dying day, I will tell you all to go and fuck yourselves. I will not speak your names. You do not deserve it. But know what I think of you and will forever think of you. This is a message that Leah Remini is sending to the people upon whose stories she earned millions of dollars and multiple Emmy Awards. She's talking to Miriam Francis. She's talking to Liz Gale. She's talking to me. And she's talking to many others. You know, it's interesting. One of the paragraphs in Mike's final blog post said, "My only real regret is not having achieved what I said I wanted to, ending the abuses of Scientology, especially disconnection and seeing Jack into adulthood. If you are in any way fighting to end those abuses, please keep the flag flying." I thought that was a very big statement of Mike to make in his final blog post. Those are the sentiments Mike shared about anyone who is working to expose the abuses of Scientology. You notice he didn't say, except for the ones who were not my biggest fans. But Leah Remini wants you guys to know, I will never forgive you for what you did to Mike and his family. To my dying day, I will tell you to all go and fuck yourselves. I will not speak your names. You do not deserve it, but know what I think of you and will forever think of you. Dare I say, somewhat ironic, in your eulogy of Mike Rinder, to completely and utterly condemn the people you feel just weren't nice enough to your good friend, Mike Rinder. Leah Remini does not care if you are someone who is getting on with the work of exposing Scientology fraud and abuse, trying to hold them accountable, helping people leave the cult, keeping people from joining the cult. She does not care because that is not what matters. What matters is if you were nice to her friend, Mike Rinder, because that's all that's important. Because Leah Remini thinks that she and Mike Rinder were the royal couple and the leaders of the ex-Scientology movement, which is bonkers. But it was very, very evident that Leah felt this way because she had no problem privately calling people up and screaming at them for daring to question or criticize Mike Rinder. Okay. Leah continues on. I am sorry to say to the ex community that there is no one left who was a senior high-ranking Sea Organization member who knows more about David Miscavige and the inner workings of Scientology than Mike Rinder. To that I say, what does that matter? Who cares? Is there an implication that the only way anything can ever be done about Scientology is if we have, quote, no one left who was a senior high-ranking Sea Org member who knows more about David Miscavige and the inner workings of Scientology than Mike Rinder? Mike Rinder has just acknowledged in his final blog post that during the 17 years that he spent after leaving Scientology, working to end it all, to whatever degree he could end it all, it didn't work. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm talking about out both sides of my mouth. I have consistently said that everything we've been doing is working quite nicely. Scientology is destroying itself quite nicely. We're doing an excellent job of speeding up the process, and we don't need government intervention. It would be nice to have. I hope we'll get it one day, but we don't need it. We're going to show up every day and do what we do, whether we get it or not. The implication here is we're all screwed because Mike Rinder's not here anymore. Leah Remini, show me any lawsuit that has occurred in the last 17 years that had a meaningful impact on Scientology. Zero. How are we worse off now than we were before? Your lawsuit isn't even moving forward. And the ironic part of this is that the lawsuits that are moving forward and the criminal litigation, the criminal proceedings against Danny Masterson the criminal proceedings were successful. It had nothing to do with Mike Rinder. This is not throwing shade at Mike Rinder. It's just a fact. I'm sorry to say that the X community that there is no one left who was a senior high-ranking C organization member who knows more about David Miscavige and the inner workings of Scientology than Mike Rinder. All of these former high-level international executives who knew Mike Rinder for decades and decades and decades have not been more effective in this movement, this anti-Scientology movement, than all of the people that you apparently just think are peons, just pieces of shit. Apparently, in order to mean anything in this community to Leah Remini, you have to know David Miscavige or know Tom Cruise. And I pose to you guys, the people that are having the biggest impact presently against Scientology are people who never fucking knew David Miscavige or Tom Cruise. So there's nothing to apologize to the ex-Scientology community for. There's a lot of people who have a lot of experience in Scientology and the Office of Special Affairs and International Management and David Miscavige. No single person held the magic key. And if they did hold the magic key, I would argue that key didn't do very much. So it wasn't that magical. Now, again, hold on. I feel like by saying it didn't do very much, I feel like I'm denigrating what I actually feel has been very, very valuable work. The difference is I feel the work everyone has been doing is very, very valuable. And the people whose name is not Mike Rinder have been just as valuable to the movement. I should say many, many, many people whose name is not Mike Rinder or Leah Remini have been just as valuable, if not more valuable, to the movement than the peoples whose names were Mike Rinder or Leah Remini. And the only problem I have with this post is if you like Mike, you're good. If you didn't like Mike, you're bad. And it's just not true. The criminal prosecution of Danny Masterson was made possible through the brave and selfless work of the Jane Does, who had nothing to gain whatsoever. Nothing to gain but seeing justice. They didn't have a fucking TV show. They didn't have a book deal. They didn't have any money to stand to make. And they put more on the line than, honestly, you ever have, Leah. And in my opinion, more than Mike did. So setting up this paradigm where the only people who matter in this community are the senior high-ranking Sea Org members who knows more about David Miscavige and the inner workings of Scientology than anyone else. Then why didn't you get his deposition for your lawsuit when you had a year to do so? You know very well that there's legal exceptions that can be made when someone is at risk of passing away. You can take their deposition well before it's actually needed, and it can be preserved for later. If Mike Rinder was and honestly, this is the argument that Leah's been making to people behind the scenes for why it's not okay to criticize Mike Rinder. It's not okay to criticize Mike Rinder. We need him for the lawsuits. We need him for the lawsuits. If you needed him so bad for the lawsuits, why didn't you get his deposition? You had an entire year to depose him. Was he unwilling? I actually don't know that he's unwilling. I don't mean for that to, sound like it's an accusation. You're the one saying this movement couldn't have gotten anywhere without Mike Rinder. Why didn't you get his deposition when you had a year to do so? Okay. Leah says, some of you worked very hard to take him down. What you have done is simply tried to make names for yourselves, make money for yourselves, while Mike was simply doing the work morning, noon, and night. He didn't do it for money, for fame, or for clicks. He did it because he felt a deep need to right the wrongs he was responsible for and right the wrongs he was not responsible for. except when it comes to answering the hard questions from Miriam. Leah, when Mike Rinder did his interview with John Atack some time ago, it feels like it's been about a year ago. Mike Rinder, as the former head of the Office of Special Affairs International, as the former watchdog committee members for the Office of Special Affairs, said with a straight face that he had never participated in or ever even known of the cover-up of any sexual abuse of children. He said that with a straight face in an interview. Except you saw his OSA files eventually. And you know that was only the tip of the iceberg. Because, I mean, meaning not the tip of the iceberg of what he had, but only what he took with him was only the tip of the iceberg of what there is to know. Even Mike's own files showed that he was very well aware of the cover-up of child sex abuse by James Barber. And yet he said with a straight face to John Atack in that video that he never participated in or even knew of it. And yet you know of hundreds and hundreds of examples of child SA being covered up in Scientology. So when you want to talk about the only thing that motivated Mike Rinder was he felt a deep need to right the wrongs. You already know that deep need had a limit. And the limit seemed to be anything that actually made him look bad. And you know that fundamentally that is some of the biggest critiques that Mike Rinder was facing over the last year. Those were honest critiques and questions. They weren't even coming from me. In the last year, have I maybe done 5 videos even talking about Mike? And usually it was responding to some shit he said about me. I have not been out to destroy Mike or his reputation in any way. But even the people that have been, the people that honestly do it with a lot of lies, like Nora, even people other than Nora, that you might think they're right or wrong in their questions, but they are genuine and sincere questions. And you knew that they had a basis in truth, even if you disagreed with their absolute truth. It is not fair to just categorize everyone who had these questions and concerns as someone who was just out to destroy Mike. And if that's how you feel, then how do you look in the mirror when you've cheerleaded the similar attacks against the people who you didn't like what they were saying? The irony of a celebrity like Leah Remini, whose entire brand is I left Scientology, who's made millions of dollars, book deals, and Emmy Awards, telling other people's stories, and that's okay. But those little people, us little people here on YouTube, doing the exact same thing every single day, we are just motivated by money, clicks, and fame. What the fuck does that say about you? How can you possibly denigrate former Scientologists? You want to talk about doing the hard work day in and day out? What the fuck do you think we're doing here on YouTube? Sure, someone like Nora just does 8 hours of videos about how evil Mike Rinder is and how evil I am. Sure. She's not focusing on Scientology at all. Pretty much every other former Scientologist is. But because you don't like the fact that everyone doesn't line up in lockstep with you, you denigrate their motives. That's a very Scientology thing to do. Some of you have worked hard to take Mike down. Leah, you've been working very hard to take down people who you didn't like what they were saying about Mike. Your threats to Danny Masterson's Jane Doe's were just that. It was a mistake for you to use your eulogy of Mike Rinder to drag and insult and denigrate and ridicule former Scientologists who are in fact doing the work day in and day out. None of us in the former Scientology community, I can probably say with authority, make more money on YouTube than I do because I have the biggest audience. What I make pales in comparison to what you've made on the backs of former Scientologists. But somehow you're virtuous and everyone else is just a fame-hungry, clout-chasing money whore. This was not the right way to use your eulogy of Mike Rinder. Regardless of your self-serving narratives, Mike did the work, mostly never being paid for it. Are you out of your mind? I have personally, see, this is the mistake because you're speaking for Mike. And so responding to you looks like an attack on Mike. Mike Rinder got paid for every lawsuit that he helped in. I've seen Mike Rinder refuse to help in lawsuits he wasn't going to get paid to help in. And I don't blame him for that. I don't consider that it was necessarily incumbent on Mike Rinder to dedicate the rest of his life talking to anyone that wanted to talk to him, spending countless hours of like where he actually has a family, actually wants to enjoy his life. I don't think Mike really owed anything to anyone. But if you spin a false narrative, people are going to come in and correct the narrative. Yeah. All right, let's look at this. You caused immense pain for this man and his family. If you ever want to show an ounce of remorse, you will publicly apologize to Christy and Mike's family with as much feeling as you so callously attacked Mike. For me, you can do nothing to be right by me. But Mike's wife and family deserve your apologies. That's fine. We'll let that just stand on its own. This is one that really stung. If not for Mike, your stories would have fallen on deaf ears. What in the actual fuck does that mean? If not for Mike Rinder, all of you former Scientologists' stories would have fallen on deaf ears. Do you see what I'm saying when I said you can, a statement like this reveals how Leah Remini feels that she and Mike Rinder are the leaders of the ex-Scientology movement. For the record, there are no leaders, but she believed they were the leaders. Everybody owes them a huge debt of gratitude. Criticism is never warranted. And without her, we would have had nothing. Well, as someone who has encouraged scores and scores and scores of former Scientologists to get onto YouTube, I will give you my opinion on this. I started my YouTube channel long before the Aftermath show was ever even a thing. And my YouTube channel did not start blowing up until long after the Aftermath show was off the air. And I was proud to contribute to the Scientology in the Aftermath show. By the way, nobody on the show received anything for it, not a penny. And what we did receive was hate websites from the Church of Scientology. I was proud to put my story out there. I was proud to contribute to the education of the masses about what the real Scientology experience is like. But that show did not give me a voice, and it did not give me a platform. I built this platform on my own. I'm responsible for the success of this platform. Not Mike Rinder, not Leah Remini, not the Aftermath show. If not for Mike, your stories would have fallen on deaf ears. Imagine telling that to 20 or 30 former Scientologists from whose stories you earned millions of dollars. If not for Mike Rinder, your stories would have fallen on deaf ears. You are all nothing without Mike Rinder and I. I got to tell you, I think that sentence right there is what made me decide to do this video. If not for Mike Rinder, your stories would have fallen on deaf ears. Absolutely incredible. I don't even know what else to say. That was the end of her blog post that I was going to cover. Yeah, let's take a look at some of the starred comments. Igor in Russia. I don't know why, but I'm addicted to the anti-Scientology content, even though topic, thank God, doesn't concern me. Igor, if you're really in Russia, you know, there's a Scientology organization in Moscow and St. Petersburg. And every now and then I'll get an email or a comment on a channel saying that Scientology has been banned in Russia, but it's not actually true. Scientology is on like some special list in Russia, but it's not banned. But Igor, if you happen to live in Moscow or St. Petersburg, maybe check out the listing for the local Scientology organization. Go by. If it's closed, can you take a photo or a video and send it to me at growingupinscientology@gmail.com? I'd appreciate it. Mark Vigil, it's a great day to not be an ex-Scientologist. Oh, Jesus. Thank you, Mark. George Massey, Leah sees rows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and feathered canyons everywhere, which her right, she refuses to look at both sides, which I get. I feel like that's a literary reference that's going over my head because I grew up in a cult, but thank you, George, for the comment. In rainbows, I don't care anymore what she says. Already disappointed me when she publicly took Mike Rinder's side in spite of all the Miriam story, look back window, unshared files. She should have stayed neutral, and she didn't. I share your sentiment. I never really expect anyone to have to line up on a particular side of an argument and start beating the drum for and against. I think it is totally acceptable, especially in a community where there's so many overlapping allegiances and alliances and friendships. I think it is totally acceptable to say, I have love and respect and care for both people on the sides of this argument. And for that reason, it's not my business and I'm going to stay out of it. I think that's acceptable. It's only certain people who are extra destructive in this community who insist that people have to line up on different sides of the line that they've drawn and absolutely condemn anyone who refuses to do so. So that's my way of agreeing with you. I never expected Leah to stay anything but neutral, because I think I empathize with Mike Rinder not wanting to respond to people who he thinks have it out for him. I empathize, guys. I've been in that boat. But I also empathize with the people calling for his head, even if I don't agree with the way that they're doing it. I understand that underneath that is actual valid concern, and I think it's there. I empathize with both sides. I didn't expect Leah to be like, yeah, Mike, get up there. I expected her not to attack and condemn the people who were asking valid questions or had valid concerns underlying what might have seemed like a witch hunt. Nancy Dane, if you can't question your former cult, then are you really out of the cult? Definite trouble source. Good to see you, Erica. Yes, the Victim Olympics. I really like the phrase Victim Olympics. The Victim Olympics, the Trauma Olympics. And it's kind of an unavoidable, inescapable fact that communities such as, the former Scientology community, which is a community of trauma victims for the most part, and other such communities, there does become eventually this somewhat of a hierarchy of whoever wins the Victim Olympics is the person you are not allowed to question or criticize. And that creates a little bit of a problem for people in the community who don't wear their trauma on their sleeve and don't really have that as their primary identity of how they, conduct themselves or whatever. And it's hard to navigate that landscape, but it is what it is. Just a Northern girl. Leah will never see anything wrong with Mike Rinder, but she feels it's her place to call out second gens. She should have just kept quiet. Yes. And guys, I'll tell you why I started out the stream by sharing the fundraiser for Mike's son is because I do not care what my problems with Mike Rinder are. Nobody deserves to grow up without a father. And you can have compassion for Mike's family, even if you've got problems with Mike Rinder. And the truth is, Mike's been a huge and extremely important part of this community. And even the problems I have with Mike Rinder don't take away from that. And that's something that's a sincerely and genuinely held belief. And I want to bring, just because, people are probably joining now who weren't here before. I want to just show it again. This is the link to the government website that Mike Rinder shared in his last blog post. He said, please don't send flowers. Instead, make a donation to Jack's college fund. So moderators, please feel free to throw that link back up in the live chat. But it's like none of this video here is attempted to even. This is not intended to be a video criticizing Mike Rinder. This is a response to Leah Remini. Okay. Inappropriate heifer. Always good to see a hef. Thank you for this. We all needed to hear it. Lisa Cunningham, may Mike rest in peace. Lydia Von Stretchclaw, personal opinion. Telling a child SI survivor to go fuck themselves is a very bad look. Understatement of the century. Telling a child sexual abuse survivor who told her story on your TV show that earned you millions of dollars and many awards to go fuck themselves. You'll never say their name again. They're beneath you. They're dead to you. And there's nothing they can ever do to make it right. Did you ever really fucking leave Scientology, Leah? I wouldn't say that about my worst enemy. Maybe privately. That's not true, because my worst enemy wouldn't be a sexual assault survivor who, on whom I made millions of dollars and won many awards. So forget that analogy. Woke up. You have access to documents that have not been released. Guys, I have shared the link to Mike's complete file of OSA files to literally anyone who's ever asked me for it. So when you say they've never been released, what I have never done, and what I feel like it's irresponsible to do, so I've never done this. I've never taken the whole file and like put it on a publicly accessible drive. But literally any journalist who's ever asked me for it, I've given them the file. And honestly, anyone in our community who's ever asked me for it, I've given them the file. So, yeah, on any, especially since in some of these things, like the argument would be made that many of these files contain very embarrassing and humiliating information about the individuals about whom the reports are written. And these reports are written by Scientology OSA people. And is it really the right thing to do to put that information out into the public unredacted? I feel like it's not really the right thing to do, but that doesn't mean they haven't been released. Maybe somebody could argue that is what that means, but I don't think it's something that is supposed to be publicly released. And also, the truth is, most people reading the files wouldn't even understand what the fuck they say. Like, there's so much Scientology lingo in them, they'd be incomprehensible. Which is also why when Mike says he gave the file to the FBI, I completely believe he gave the file to the FBI. The FBI wouldn't understand what the fuck's even in these files. So, yeah. Sean says, did the deceased Mr. Rinder during his lifetime publish a finding of a list of children whom he was aware were victims of sexual exploitation? Well, on the one hand, I'm going to say no. On the other hand, is it actually the right thing to do to publish a list of names of victims who might not want to be named? So I'm going to say he didn't do that, but I'm also going to say I don't think he should have. Mark, Problems of Scientology, says, I was on the aftermath too. Only got a thing of honey from Leah and a free hotel room during the taping. Mark, why do I not know who you are? I feel like if I knew your whole name, I would, of course, know who you are. But I can't tell from your photo. And I can't tell from your name. But yeah. Lisa Cunningham, she's an actor. Justin Castillo, I'm an ex-Scientologist. Does she mean independent Scientologists? She is talking about anyone in the ex-Scientology community who has publicly criticized Mike Rinder over the last year. That's who she's talking about. Love Maddie, too much black and white thinking. Like the Scientology brainwashes their followers to be like, we're humans and we're all flawed. Forgiveness and compassion doesn't exist within Scientology. Let's try to have it outside of it. Just a girl and her cat. I think Leah is acting on pure emotion right now because we all know how close they were. But she should have left the second gens out of this. She is going to alienate so many people. Yeah. I predict that part of this outrage, I believe that part of this lashing out is because she knows her lawsuit is dead and done in the water. Her lawsuit is toast. This is my prediction. Her lawsuit is currently on appeal. Now, it's on appeal because Scientology won an anti-SLAPP ruling against her. Now, the problem with Scientology winning an anti-SLAPP ruling against her is Scientology is allowed to ask for legal fees. So, or at least they won about half of the anti-SLAPP, so they're allowed to ask for about half of the legal fees. Take it with a grain of salt. I'm not a legal expert. I'm giving you my opinion to the best of my understanding. What happened is Leah appealed the decision in the anti-SLAPP because she thought she shouldn't have lost any of it. Scientology appealed the decision in the anti-SLAPP because they thought they should have won more of it. All of the legal fees for the anti-SLAPP are piling up and piling up during the appeal process. The stakes right now are so high that Leah could end. That's why the stakes are so high right now, because the longer this appeal goes on, the more money Scientology is potentially going to be allowed to go ask the court to award them from Leah's pockets. I believe that one of the reasons so much vitriol has been occurring over the last 6 to 8 months is because they could see the writing on the wall. Once Leah threatened Dana Masterson's victims, once her lawyers had to step down, once she had to find new attorneys to represent her for the appeal, once she lost the anti-SLAPP, it gutted her lawsuit from the most important complaints. She knew the time was ticking when she was going to have to drop her lawsuit, settle, and pay fees. And that is why, in my opinion, she chose to go to war, because she had nothing more to lose. She was going to lose her lawsuit. Mike was dying. Everything was fucked. And so it was time to go to war. It was time to burn it all down. That's my personal opinion based on everything I've been privy to behind the scenes for the last 6 to 8 to 12 months. Constance June, Leah was an ambassador for Child USA. Why did she not tell people about the look back window? Correct? It's going to shock you. Well, I already said it, but I don't believe Leah knew. Well, in fact, I know Leah didn't know. These ambassadorships, they mean nothing. It's fluffy foo-foo PR things. It means nothing. It's just put a celebrity's photo on the website, have her come to the fucking annual dinner, and we get some clout because Leah Remini is our ambassador for children and families. Leah, what did you ever do for Child USA as the ambassador for children and families? You clearly weren't being the ambassador for the children and families of Scientologists, because that would have required you to understand what was happening with the look back litigation window and to do something about it. And I can tell you that when Jane Doe 1 called Leah Remini about this look back window, she had no fucking clue about it, because Mike Rinder had not told her. Unless the story's different, Leah, in which case, please feel free to post about it in your next Substack. Lisa Cunningham. Leah grew up in Scientology and learned negative stereotypes. No offense, Aaron. No offense taken. Laura Lee, I was only 15 when I worked for the Minneapolis org as the main receptionist and phone operator. I'm now 68 and have deep hurt from the whole experience and would like to see justice and see them fall. Hi, Laura. If you want to tell your story sometime, shoot me an email. growingupinScientology@gmail.com. It's Only Me Watching says, I was under the impression that Leah was helping the Danny Masterson victims. I can understand why you would be under that impression. Mackenzie Faust, I don't understand, though. Why is she attacking ex-Scientologists when she's an ex-Scientologist herself? Because she's only attacking the ex-Scientologists who have been asking questions or making statements about Mike Rinder for the last year. She's not attacking all ex-Scientologists, only the ones who were not big fans of Mike Rinder. Open My Eyes 67. Well, ex-Scientologists don't have the rank, apparently. Exactly. Sarasota Jerry, nobody has suffered more? What about Debbie Cook? What about Paulette Cooper? What about Lisa McPherson? Yeah, that's right. And all the people who even took their own lives because of how much abuse they suffered at the hands of Scientology. But yeah, guys, the guy who became, famous from a TV show and got a book deal, he's the one who suffered the most. He's the one who suffered, not you guys. Mike's the one who suffered the most. Mackenzie Faust, I remember watching Leah's show about Scientology. So what changed? Was she just in this for the money and didn't actually care about Scientology victims? No, I don't think Leah Remini was in it for the money. I think Leah Remini does care about Scientology victims. There's been sort of a paradigm shift over the last year and a half, where to Leah Remini, what became more important than the movement itself was just protecting Mike Rinder from criticism. And I think that's just a losing formula. It's Only Me Watching. What is this look back window? Well, it's already closed. Now, I've seen some videos on other channels about maybe there's another version of a look back window. And the only reason I haven't done a video about it is because it's above my pay grade and I don't want to get it wrong. But I did describe the look back window earlier, so I'm just not going to do it again. Apologies. I realize your question's from almost an hour ago, so it's okay. Abigail, in my opinion, this post shows that she is hurting. I'm taking everything with a grain of salt. If a year from now she still holds these views, then I will disagree with her. Right now, she is grieving. Well, that's very charitable of you, Abigail, and it's fine for you to give her that benefit of the doubt. I don't have the luxury of giving her that benefit of the doubt because I know a little more for sure. But I don't expect, everyone make up your own mind. Donna Hanna, Ramon's girl. Question, Aaron. Also, did Leah donate any of that money from that TV show to the Aftermath Foundation? I heard she did not donate a single dime from the money she made off of that show. I can tell you, as the person who was running the Aftermath Foundation for 6 years, that Leah Remini never donated a single penny of her own money to the Aftermath Foundation. What she did do was she donated $5,000 of merch money from the Don't Be Culty hoodies to the foundation. It was just money that was raised from the Don't Be Culty hoodies. So it was merch money. And, $5,000 is better than not $5,000. But that's the answer. Just a girl and her cat. Sometimes in a war, you have to work with people you don't like, but you pinch your nose and do what you have to do. This group fighting against Scientology needs to do the same. I absolutely agree with you. WFB3, what in the hell is wrong with Leah that her own lawyers had to step down after Leah, threatened some of Danny Masterson's victims? Jeez. I mean, that is exactly what was wrong. Like, that was why. You'll notice the lawyers that stepped down were the lawyers that were representing both parties. There were multiple lawsuits. There were many law firms. There were many lawyers. Some lawyers and some firms represented both parties. when one party that's being represented by an attorney is threatening another party that's being represented by the same attorney, that's what you call a conflict. And in order to resolve that conflict, the attorneys had to step down. Popcorning piggies. As a never in, I actually want to hear from more people that left Scientology more recently, regardless of their rank. I agree, and stay tuned because there's a lot more of that coming. Lamsey Divey. Aaron, thank you for handling this stream the way that you are. What an effective way to get a real message out in a clear and concise way. It helps us never-ins understand without the vitriol. Thank you. Bewitched 007. I'm getting so tired of all the drama in the SPTV community. Totally understand. JM Ledger, have to leave. Thank you for what you do. Was not Claire high ranking as well? Yeah, Claire was high ranking. I guess you're saying because Leah's saying there's no one else left in the community. She was high ranking, but she didn't have anything to do with the Office of Special Affairs. Claire was actually higher ranking than Mike, technically speaking. Now, in practice, in execution, was Claire really, like on the org board, she was more senior to Mike, but in practice, she was not more senior to Mike. How do I explain this? Claire was higher up in the hierarchy than Mike was. But Miscavige didn't really care about the hierarchy. Mike Rinder answered really to nobody but David Miscavige. And even though Claire was higher up in the whole organization, Claire did not answer directly to David Miscavige. And also they had just completely different responsibilities. And so legally and technically speaking, Claire was a higher rank in Scientology organizationally than Mike Rinder ever was, but that doesn't really tell the full story. I'm trying not to bring up comments that are just too much negative on Mike, since it wasn't really the purpose of this stream. Danny Crook, I don't know that you can unlearn the need for an enemy that a cult like Scientology bakes into you. There are periods of peace in the community is a gift. That there are always issues is human. I like that. I like that. Now, on my channel, I'll be the first to admit, there's plenty of times that I've taken the opportunity to just do a video just dressing someone down. That's true. Of course, I say I only do that when I feel that I need to, but I'm sure everyone in this community who does content attacking someone else would say they did it because they felt they needed to. Why am I explaining that? Oh, because, when all else fails, the best thing you can do is just do more videos exposing Scientology. And I have done a lot of videos taking shots at people, and I don't deny that, and I don't walk that back either. I don't even regret it. But I know that the only thing the vast majority of my audience cares about at all is the videos about Scientology. And that most of them skip or roll their eyes at videos that are what you would call drama. And that's why I've done almost none of it. And then I don't know, if you look back on my channel in the last many months, I have done almost none of it. There have been some very big exceptions, particularly about the protester community. But like I said, I know that the real key to success in this former Scientology world is to focus on Scientology and not each other. And yeah, so I totally understand when people say, you know what, I'm sick of the drama. You should be. That's okay. All right, let's see. Scrolling through these. Constance June. Once again, the narrative that all of you owe Mike and Leah for sharing your trauma with the world. I cannot stand that narrative. Yeah. It really stings. Because the truth is, the former Scientology world embracing the YouTube platform the way that they have, even though the experiment's gone sideways in a number of ways, is a way to bypass the gatekeeping system of needing studios and producers and publishers to authorize what you can say, and when you can say it, and who's going to see it and who's going to hear it. It levels the playing field where anyone can not only tell their story however they want, whenever they want, for as long as they want, but they can help other people tell their stories as well. That is something that should be celebrated. That is something that should be encouraged. That is not something that should be denigrated by relegating it to clicks and views and fame. You think we're getting fame on YouTube? Do you think anybody would know who Mike Rinder was if it weren't for your TV show? But you don't say that Mike Rinder, rode your coattails for fame, do you? No, but everyone out here on YouTube doing it independently in their own way without needing you or a producer or a network, they're the ones doing it for fame? I don't even see how you can say that. Stephanie, I found you before hearing Mike's name. Aaron, no offense to Mike, of course. Rest in peace. Cheryl Ray, I've watched ex-Scientology stuff for decades before I even knew who Leah was. Guys, you didn't see this clip on when I earlier this year or last year, Jordan Peterson asked me to come on his podcast to talk about Scientology. And he sent a crew out here to my house. You guys didn't get to see the behind the scenes stuff because this is after Jordan Peterson had already signed on with the Daily Wire. So he would put a portion of the interview on his YouTube channel, but another portion of the interview was members only for Daily Wire. And there was a part where I was trying to explain how this whole movement had progressed to where it is on YouTube. And the truth is, it did sort of start the way I was telling the story. It started with Leah leaving and all the media attention and the TV show and the Aftermath Foundation and all this stuff. And I said, you're familiar with who Leah, you obviously know who Leah Remini is. And Jordan was like, no, I'm sorry. I don't really follow this space. I go, no, Leah's like a famous actress. He's like, no, I don't know who she is. I'm sorry. Now, don't think for a second that I think I'm more well-known than Leah Remini. I know that's not true. But the idea that the only way people ever got introduced to this space or people's stories or to me is through Leah Remini and Mike Rinder, and we should all just be bowing down and thanking them for ever giving us a moment of their time is just a completely and utterly false narrative. Jason Smith. Well said, Aaron. Proper tone, hard questions, disclosure, and were measured to a degree, but also called out hypocrisy exactly as should be. You are far from perfect, like all of us, but appropriate and a classy video. Thank you very much. Eat more pizza now, David. Everybody in the chat blew up this. Everybody in the chat blew up this channel and helped spread the word about that damn cult. Exactly. And I'll tell you guys, I mean, one of the reasons from the beginning of this channel, when it started having success, that I started encouraging other people to do the same is so that it wasn't some sort of a gatekeeping thing where people felt like they had to be my friend or be on my good side in order to get airtime or get their story out. I was like, that's the greatest thing about this YouTube thing. You don't need anyone. And that's why I was like, do your own stuff. And if you want to collaborate with me, if you want me to collaborate with you, if you want me to promote your stuff, happy to do so. Me promoting your stuff helps me as well. Was happy to have it be a collaborative environment. But at no time was I ever trying to set it up in any way where people owed me anything. And as you can see, nobody does owe me anything. And that's pretty goddamn clear. So that's why I bristle so much at the idea that anyone in the former Scientology community should be, if it weren't for Mike and Leah, your stories would have fallen on deaf ears. I mean, that just sounds like you're not important enough for anyone to care about your story. The only reason anybody cared about your story is because you were on our show. We're the reason that people were tuning in, not you. Nobody even knew who you were. Why would anyone tune in to hear your story? You're nobody. You're nobody. That's what I hear when I read those words from Leah. And actually, she almost said that to me. We were having an argument. She called me one time when I was driving from San Diego to LA, and she was screaming at me, blaming me for people making negative comments on Mike's videos. And I said, you know, Leah, when I do a video and I put it out there and I'm telling the world that X, Y, and Z, she cut me off. The world isn't listening to you, Aaron. You're not telling the world anything, okay? The world is not your audience. And it's like, okay, Leah, that's not exactly what I was saying, but thank you for letting me know that you think I'm just a peon. Nobody cares what I have to say. I didn't know David Miscavige. I didn't get to ride on a motorcycle with Tom Cruise. I wasn't at international management. Then you tell me, Leah. You tell me why people tune in for the videos. You tell me why you don't, why aren't you on YouTube telling people's stories? Leah Remini could be 100 times more successful on YouTube than I am. She's made it very clear that she sees YouTube as beneath her. Leah, instead of suing Scientology and complaining that they were getting your podcast canceled and they did this and they did that, that's because you were trying to operate within the system. You were trying to operate in a system that has gatekeepers. You were trying to operate in a system that was booby-trapped because it had weak points that Scientology could attack. You, Leah, could get on YouTube and do what I do every day and do what you characterize as, or when Mike did it or not did it, doing the real and honest work every day, morning, noon, and night. That's what I do here on YouTube. You may not like me. You may not like some of my videos, but that is what I'm doing here on YouTube. Why aren't you doing it, Leah? Instead of crying that YouTube got this sponsor canceled, do you want to know who gets my sponsors canceled? Stephanie fucking Hutchinson and Jamie fucking Thomas get my sponsors canceled or try to. I don't even need to be attacked by Scientology. I can be attacked by these lunatics in the ex-Scientology space. But am I crying about it? No, I'm just going to do more videos. I'm going to get more sponsors. Okay? You could be doing what I'm doing, but you're not. Why not, Leah? Why not? I guess YouTube's just for the peons, just for the fame and the click horse, not the prestigious actresses who want to make millions of dollars and get book deals and win Emmy Awards. I'm okay with YouTube's success, Leah. I don't need the Emmys. I'll take the YouTube success. It's good enough for me. Jill Davidson, thank you for gifting a membership. Eat More Pizza Now. Your SPTV sign isn't as crooked as Leah is. Connie Canamar. George's references the lyrics of an old song about living in a fantasy world. I get it. Matt Elliott, MAA, SPTV Canada. Leah has become very hypocritical, in my opinion. Guys, we're scratching the tip of the iceberg, but yes, I agree with you. The Artsy Hair Jewelry Company is a new member. Thank you. You probably got one of the gifted memberships. KPSI Bobby. Aaron, this video seemed hard on you. Keep your head up. Leah's a bully. Thank you for standing up to bullies, buddy. Yes, that's the other thing. The power dynamics are completely messed up. You know, you guys know that I think that what Nora's been doing to Mike every day is despicable. You guys know that I think it's horrible and disgusting. But imagine, is it even possible for Nora to bully Mike Rinder? I mean, Mike Rinder's Mike Rinder. Like there's a power disparity at play here. You know? Nora's bullying Mike Rinder. I think what Nora does is detestable for its own sake. I think it's a waste of time and energy. I think Nora not focusing on Scientology and spending her time shitting on former Scientologists is like a psyop, an OSA-op that she's, succumbed to. But how can Leah be like, oh, Nora's been so mean to Mike Rinder? Mike Rinder's the one that has the platform and the influence and the reach and Leah Remini on his side. So yes, when you talk about someone being a bully, Leah would probably say, you guys are all bullying Mike Rinder. What? You guys are the one with the power, Leah. Isn't that the premise of your argument? You guys are the one with the power. KPSI Bobby, yes, drama sucks, but bullies only respond to strength. They need to be called out when they are abusing their platform. Tay Dory. At this point, growing up in Scientology channels shared more stories and in more details than the Aftermath show. I can't even watch the show legally in Poland, but I watch every interview here. That's a very good point. Also, the amount of information damning to Scientology that was not allowed to be aired on the show, on A&E, because it was owned by Disney, and Disney is susceptible to threats from attorneys. Mike and Leah had always told me that some of the most damning information is what was not allowed to be aired. Then why aren't you on YouTube airing it? I have called out more Scientology pedophiles by name on this channel than were ever called out in 3 seasons of the Scientology and the Aftermath show. And the only pedophile who was ever called out on that show was Miriam's dad. And Mike and Leah ended up leading the charge, attacking Miriam. I think what's being done on YouTube presently, the reach collectively of former Scientologists on YouTube, dwarfs the reach of the Aftermath show. And that's not a competition. It's the reality of this platform and the future of media. Denigrating the effort of former Scientologists on YouTube and trying to play this game of which content creation is more prestigious, the Aftermath show or the clickbaity YouTuber folks, is like, Leah, you should be on YouTube. You should be asking former Scientologists to tell their stories on your channel. But I know how much you can't stand having to sit there and listen to someone else's boring fucking story. As you have told me, you didn't need Mike Rinder to do your podcast. It did not have to be the Leah Remini and Mike Rinder podcast. It could be the Leah Remini podcast, but you won't do it because you can't fucking stand talking to these people. Some of us consider ourselves to be these people. And that's why we can stand talking to them, because we are them. We are not this person on the hill for whom everyone should just be thanking all the time. Pill Paula. As a Brit, I found out about Scientology through Louis Theroux. I genuinely have no idea who Leah is, apart from she's supposed to be famous in the US, and that when she left, it was big. Yeah. Sharona, thank you for keeping on. Does it matter to you? Not to me. Leah, please go Method 9 word clear the word world. Vintage Mama of 3, new member. Hello, Vintage Mama of 3. And does it matter to you? Not to me. Gifted 5 channel memberships. Thank you very, very much. Well, thank you for hanging out with this unscrupulous YouTuber who's only here for clicks, fame, money, and clout. I appreciate it, you guys. Apologies that I'm not a prestigious actor. I apologize for never having known David Miscavige personally, or for never having ridden on the back of Tom Cruise's motorcycle. I hope you will still lower yourselves to visit my channel every now and then and hear my stories, other people's stories, my responses to current events that are Scientology related or Scientology adjacent. And I hope you will help me in continuing trying to educate the world that Scientology is really nothing more than a multi-billion-dollar international family-destroying human trafficking cult. And I hope you'll join me in my journey to continue to share that message every single day of the damn year from now until I die, guys, because that's what I'm here for. All right, thank you for hanging out with me, and I will talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.